Mark, thank you. Joining us now is Congressman Adam Schiff of Burbank.
He's the chairman, as you know, of the House Intelligence Committee. Welcome back. Good to have you, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Let's talk about these mass shootings. Once again, we're dealing with this in this nation. As you know, the vast majority of the American people want better background checks at the very least. You on the House side have passed legislation about this and other things. Is there any chance that it's now going to be introduced, at least on the Senate side?
There is a chance. I think the pressure is really mounting on Mitch McConnell, who proudly proclaims himself the Grim Reaper that kills all these bills that come over from the House, to take up universal background checks. It's not only supported by the vast majority of the American people, it's supported by the vast majority of NRA members.
Yeah.
Only the NRA leadership and the GOP leadership in Congress is at odds with the American people here, and it makes no sense that you can go into a gun store, be turned down because you're a felon, leave the gun store and legally buy the same weapon off the back of someone's truck. We ought to put an end to that. It's not going to stop every shooting, but it will stop some of them. And if we take action against assault weapons and extended ammunition clips, that will save even more lives.
In recent congressional testimony, you had stated that white supremacists have become a bigger threat to Americans within the U.S. than foreign terror groups. After 9/11, the Patriot Act was passed. That gave authorities more power to stop terror plots that were coming from abroad. But when it comes to domestic terrorism, authorities don't have the same options or the same power, if you will. Can you explain why that is, and what do you think needs to be done to change that?
There's a specific statute that goes after transnational terrorism. And one of the benefits of that statute is you can not only go after people who commit those crimes, but you can also go after people providing material support to those committing those crimes. There is no equivalent for domestic terrorism. And so in cases like El Paso, they will have to use a hate crime law. They'll have to use a homicide statute. So I do think that we really need to consider enacting something specific. But the bigger issue, frankly, is the ready access of these powerful weapons and the growth of this pernicious ideology. The fact that people who now subscribe to this white supremacist ideology can find each other online in these dark chat rooms and inspire each other to commit these horrific acts. It's the same kind of thing we saw with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and still do, but this is now such a growing trend and threat that we need to confront it head on. And that means we also have to acknowledge, I think, the contributions to that ideology when people from the president on down make statements that are in line with white supremacist ideology.
Let's turn to the Muller testimony. We watched as you chaired the House Intelligence Committee, as Mr. Muller testified before your committee. I just wondered if we could get your reaction to the testimony. Were you disappointed in the testimony and the way it was presented, the way he answered some of the questions? And then separately, the majority of Democrats now favor moving forward with an impeachment inquiry. Have you decided to change your position on that? Are you ready for an impeachment inquiry?
Yeah. Well, I was not disappointed at all with Mueller's testimony. We had a good idea that he was going to be a very reluctant witness. He made it quite plain. He did not want to come in and testify. And indeed, you know, he was not an unknown commodity. He had testified about 80 times before Congress, and he's not the kind to go in and tell a long narrative story. You're going to have to ask him questions and pry out the answers, and that's what we had to do. But those answers were pretty damning. They told a story of disloyalty to country by the Trump campaign, how many people, including the president, were motivated by greed to try to make money during the campaign from real estate projects in Moscow or other deals that Mike Flynn and others in the administration had, and all the lies surrounding it. So it was powerful testimony, even if it was halting testimony. In terms of my own view, we are in the middle of an investigation already that may lead to impeachment. People seem to think if we pass a resolution formally calling what we're doing an impeachment proceeding, that suddenly these witnesses are going to come in. We're still going to have to litigate in court to force them to come in. And I think we ought to get those witnesses. We should see the evidence before we make a decision about indicting or impeaching the president. So I think what we're doing is methodical.
But you seem to have changed your language a bit with regard to impeachment. You were sort of firmly opposed to it. Now it seems like you're suggesting at least in previous statements, that maybe you're ready for that. But it sounds like now you're saying maybe not so much.
I haven't said that I'm firmly opposed to impeachment. I'm not ready to impeach him at this point. The Mueller testimony and the Mueller report is not the evidence itself. It's a summary of the evidence. And maybe I'm just an old prosecutor. I'd like to hear from the witnesses themselves. I'd like to see the documents themselves. I'd like to make sure that I can make the case, if not to the Senate, which will vote to acquit him. I think we need to be realistic about that. At least we want to be able to make the case to the American people. And I need to be satisfied that we can make that case to the American people before I'm ready to recommend impeachment.
Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you for coming in this morning. Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, good to see you.
Good to see you.